would like to say that, I would actually like to say that my priorities have always been to improve graduate student life. So when I got involved in politics, it was about a year ago, and that includes both like politics outside of student politics and in student politics. The reason I got involved is because I looked at my own department where research funding is actually better than most, and I thought it's terrible how poorly students are getting paid for really valuable research. Research that's going to save lives, research that's going to make people's lives better, and research that should be funded and should be supported throughout our society. We want people to do this work, and we should pay them a decent amount. And after going through that, I also looked at how our programs are operated and all of those issues, and I thought it's, something needs to change. That's why I got involved in politics, that's why I got involved in student politics, and it's what I've pushed for every step of the way. So basically, if you look at my record, I don't have any results up until last month. I tried to talk with as many students as possible. I tried to make sure that I was representing students as well as possible in my first few months as being on an exec, and students were not particular, and it was difficult because frankly students didn't know why the GSU existed or care. So what I did is I talked to students, I figured out where their concerns were, and I tried to address them. With meetings with USW, with going up the chain of command on the quality assurance framework, and coming down and trying to get increases in stipends, with dealing with issues like the ancillary fees in some of our departments, which were $1,500 per student out of the blue. I tried to address the issues that I could find, and now that I've been able to address some of them within the last month, I hope to go back to students and say, this is what I've done, now we can come, you guys should keep coming back to the GSU because we can work together to make graduate student life better for all graduate students. We can work together to make these improvements if you guys are willing to. And so, if you guys are willing to work with us. And so that's where my priority comes from, and that's what I'd like to see change.
Okay, Amit, would you like to respond about where you're...
Sure, I mean, so I don't quite have the same history here that Jason has apparently with the questioner and other issues that went on. But, so the question was, what are my priorities? That's the students in Divisions 3 and 4. They're the ones who are voting for the position. They're the ones who I'm responsible for. And those are the people whose priorities I would try to uphold if I was elected as Academic Funding Commissioner. In my undergraduate years, I spent 4 years on student liaison committees, dealing not with funding issues. Of course, undergrads don't really have funding, but dealing with curriculum issues, dealing with instruction issues, and making many positive changes to the curriculum that benefited both the students and the university.
And Matthew?
Well, I agree with what Amit just said, except his personal experience, which was not true of me. But just to add something new, I would say that part of my priority, or part of the impetus and why I got involved in this election was I saw during the QP ratification process that in the divisions, the departments of Division 3 that I'm most familiar with, there was sort of like a wellspring of energy and engagement in funding and academic issues that was more or less stoked by 3902 for the strike vote and beyond. And what I sort of see now is that a lot of this energy and a lot of this engagement is dissipating, and sort of, as Jason said, the next agreement won't be bargained for until 3 years from now, and I would like to get involved with the GSU executive and specifically in academics and funding to sort of keep this energy alive and to sort of fill the gap from now and not just let all of this go away as it was just some singular event that won't affect them again, that it allows the GSU to, I'm sort of ranting, so I'll end there.
Right, thank you. Daniel, do you have a question?
Being successful in terms of Division 3 and 4 issues means that you have to work together as part of a team. Just wondering if the candidates could speak to the ways that they've worked together as a team in the past and how they bring that to GSU.
Oh, that's fair. So bring an example of how you've been a team member. Excellent. Amit, would you like to start?
Sure. Well, as I mentioned earlier, in my undergraduate years, I was on the Student Liaison Committee for for liaison committee for my program, and I was responsible for actively engaging with the students and asking them, what their concerns were, what sort of conflicts they had with exam timing, course timing, all these sorts of things. And then there was a couple of us representatives, so we would each kind of pick a different block. The class would run different blocks, go after them, talk to them, try to solicit some feedback, and then we'd meet, we'd sit down, combine them together, and then present a unified front at the liaison meetings. In my work experience, I used to work for Google. We had a lot of high-level meetings all the time where we had to discuss technical and social and policy issues. Those sort of meetings, which are similar to the meetings that would happen within the Graduate Education Council. Like really, the importance is like listening to other people, being prepared, being informed, and being ready not just to argue your side, but being ready to persuade someone to give you something that you want.
Matthew?
Yeah, so I would say in my experience, I too, in my undergraduate years when I was doing engineering and mathematics at Queen's University, I was the third and fourth year student rep for our student council, which was essentially just a social position. But it did involve engaging with all the students, making sure that they were aware of all the activities that were going on, and then participating with the other members on the council as to what was going on. As well as that, I was also on the executive board in undergrad, or the editorial board, sorry, of a philosopher's journal called the Philosopher's Cafe. And as you can imagine, in the discussions as we were discussing submissions and what we thought should go into the journal were very heated, and much like Amit said, I think the benefits or what you have to keep in mind when you're working with a team is to be respectful and to listen to other people's opinions and have communication, but also be able to strongly and concisely put forward your opinion.
And Jason?
I mean, apart from ultimate frisbee, the two things that I've been working on in teams the most have been actually to do with either the Biochemistry Graduate Students Union and the Graduate Students Union. So in the Biochemistry Graduate Students Union, obviously, we've been trying for the last couple of years to, it started off as kind of, we couldn't get students involved, and so now since I joined, we have been making efforts to get new students in, which is coming along pretty decently. We've got a number of new students, first-year students this year, which is my, I think, second full year. And we've just tried to, we've been able to work together on a lot of issues that are of particular concern to our department as a team, whether it be on stipends or time to completion is the big issue in Faculty of Medicine. On the Graduate Students Union side, obviously, Daniel, you have a very good idea of how our team works. Very dysfunctionally. But you know, it's throughout. But it's we actually have had a number of successes this year, in part because you know we have been able to have successful collaborations at times when we've had to come together on a variety of different issues. And I think ancillary fees is a recent one, but even in having meetings between different course unions, we started that up in December, and I did that with Anne. And that had a little bit of success. I mean, I don't think it had as much as we would have liked, but it brought a lot of new ideas into our group that have been very helpful. And I think it will be something that the next group can work on.
I'm sorry, I had Anne and then
Aaron.
Which way have you guys currently engaged within your departments to tackle graduate funding issues?
We're going to start with Jason, then going first.
So I guess I just...
Or departments of various roles, I guess, in your case.
Yeah, I mean, I can just say, again, for the way that... So the gains that I've made funding university-wide are really the gains that I've made within my own faculty. And the reason for that is because that's where I had the most cooperation from the student unions themselves. People knew me and they worked with me really well, and so in the last month we were able to get things. And now I'm trying to work with the Faculty of Pharmacy, and hopefully we'll get stuff there. Really, it got put together within like a month, so it's not like something that it's something that I hope can be repeated in not too long of the future, distant future. But that's something that so within my own department, the way that we got it was we worked together, we ran a petition that was very strongly worded. That's something that I would kind of take issue with CUPE, is that I didn't think that their messaging was necessarily as strong as it should have been. Our messaging was very, very, very strong and severe, and I worked a lot with CUPE on messaging, we were not just asking for a small increase, we asked for a $2,000 or $3,000 increase, and we ended up getting a smaller amount. And then the other things that we did is we just worked along the quality assurance framework, and and that put a lot of pressure on the departmental chairs to do something about funding. So that's how funding got dealt with in my own department. And I think though it creates a reasonable framework for how funding issues should be addressed in other departments. Put pressure on the department to get something done from the students, give a clear sign that there's concern through something like a petition, and then put pressure from above using something like the quality assurance framework or using advice from the ministry, and always using very strong wording that's saying stuff like, you know, we're in an employer-employee relationship. Because that's actually what happens a lot in Division 3 and 4. People have said in the humanities that it's different because people don't believe in the value of the research. Employer-employee relationship is a very big difference between the two divisions.
Amit?
Sure. So, but the department I'm in doesn't actually, I don't think, have nearly as severe funding issues as other departments. In computer engineering is fairly well funded, and the students I've talked to don't have any issues with their actual funding package. There's issues with the way that TA-ships are granted and the limited number of TA-ships available for ECE students, but there's nothing else really in my department that I've had to address. I just want to address what Jason just said, though, his attitude towards negotiating with the university, that I don't think that being as militant and as strident as possible is really a winning strategy. I think that maybe that's okay if you're the university and you actually have the money, but when you're a student union and your job is to persuade and convince someone else using, you know, what's termed soft power, I think that being overly militant or overly strident or asking for beyond what would be reasonable demands is not only will not work, but it can actually be counterproductive in terms of hardening the university's response to your position. Like, I think that it's interesting that this round of QP bargaining, the university was extremely militant in the way that it dealt with the union in terms of how it wasn't planning on locking out students in case of a strike, compared to in the past. It has done that. So I think that's important that when you elect, someone who will deal with the university in a way that that recognizes the power balance between university and students, and does their best to not like maybe score talking points, but instead get as much as you can for the students.
And Matthew?
Yeah, so as I sort of intimated earlier, the recent round of bargaining in QP is sort of what motivated me to get involved in this situation. So during that ratification process, I was sort of not in any official capacity, but in an unofficial capacity, attending rallies and sort of drumming up support within the mathematics department, trying to engage as much people as possible, not only for the strike vote, but also for the ratification vote. And in regards to that, I would definitely disagree with Jason that the messaging from QP was not strong or clear. I think it was both strong and incredibly clear, and I think it motivated and energized the hitherto unfathomable amount of support for a strike, i.e. at the strike vote for 91%. But I mean, I think everyone clearly knew what we were attempting to strike for and what we wanted out of this agreement. And that did get diluted at the end when it became clear to me that the bargaining committee, or at least the remaining members of the bargaining committee, weren't willing to follow through on it. But something that I would like to bring up now is that in terms of mathematics departments and the fellow from chemistry who's now left, but also perhaps physics as well, there is a problem with the student associations and the student councils in these departments not, number one, being completely functional, and number two, not allowing the students in these departments to have direct effects on academic issues within their department. Aside from just going straight to the GSU, which, as people have been intimating, no one really knows what it does, or most of the population, graduate student population, is not engaged at all with GSU. So one thing that I would really like to stress for, in my position as Academic and Funding Commissioner in Divisions 3 and 4 specifically, would be to try to re-engage these local student associations in the different departments so that students can work towards these issues in their individual departments.
Were you allowed to respond?
He was
Well, the other
addressed
two-
by
the other two did respond, and you were directly, I guess, people that directly disagreed with you, so I will give you 30 seconds to respond.
Yeah, I mean, so specifically what we said in our department was, look, these are what technicians and other people are making for the same type, pretty much the exact same work. And that doesn't mean that we should be making that amount, but it does give you a value price that the university's already put on that type of work, and that was a lot strong. That's what I mean by strong messaging. It said, we're worth $40,000. Why are we getting paid $18,000? And I don't think that that's unreasonable. It's done in almost any other type of bargaining situation, and that's the type of strong messaging that I think needs to get out there more often. Not.
All right, so I have time for 3 questions. So I have Aaron, Ashley, and you, sir. So Aaron first.
Yeah, so the question about OPIRG is an important one, and unfortunately the person who asked it earlier made the mistake of making a comment that he was not allowed to make, so I'd like to bring that question up again. So this is specifically for Jason. So earlier tonight you said that something along the lines of students don't care about the GSU because they don't know about it. You could also argue that for OPIRG. Now, the current GSU executive was interested in renegotiating the memorandum of agreement with OPIRG, which would have put its opt-outs online. Now, the problem with putting opt-outs online is that it has a devastating effect for the organization because most students opt out and then the organization loses its funding. Now, so the question is actually really simple. Do you support online opt-outs for OPIRG?
I believe, so the answer, I personally I'm not a supporter of OPIRG, and I know that a lot of people in my department are not supportive of OPIRG, and my general feeling is that probably most students aren't. But on the other hand, in council, they said that they didn't want online opt-outs, and my belief is that my job and role as Academic Funding Commissioner and as part of the executive is to adhere to the will of council and adhere to the will of the voters. And so if I'm elected, I'm not going to go against either of those.
Very good.
Can we respond?
That was actually explicitly directed at Jason, and I'm sorry, I'm really sorry. For instances of saving time, so Ashley, please.
I realize now that what I was going to say isn't actually a question, but more of a response to something that was said that I felt was sort of misleading.
That's fine. If you feel so, then please respond.
I just felt the need to point out that obviously, like Jason, you weren't apprised to the interactions that happened between the QB 3902 bargaining team and the employer. So obviously that you would not be aware of the language that was actually used in that situation, which is the actual analogy to what you were talking about, which is your communication with the employer within your department. So I felt that that was just an inaccurate statement to make, and I think that the other two people up there already adequately responded to your comment about the language, but specifically from Divisions 3 and 4. In terms of the language that QB used in community, which I was not responsible for, but as I was not the spokesperson, but the language that QB 3902 used with members, there was actually a huge amount of backlash from Divisions 3 and 4 specifically. So I would be rather curious, that would make me question how attuned you actually are to the needs of people in Div 3 and 4, because we were actually told largely by people in Division 3 and 4 that we needed to tone back the strength and like the strong nature of that language.
Of which language? I think we're getting lost in terms, and I apologize for this to begin with, but like, we're talking about strength of language and it's not really clear what terms you're referring to.
That's true, I'm actually responding to your comment, which I was just quoting. So I was actually separating that.
I was unfortunately rambling.
Okay, well I was separating that into 2 parts. One is that you were actually referencing your interaction with the employer, which you would obviously not be apprised to the bargaining team's interaction with the employer. And also I was just pointing out that the language that was used in QB 3902 bargaining bulletins and emails and communications with members, the response from Division 3 and 4, stewards and members, I find to be very different than what you just expressed.
I would imagine that a large part of that in Divisions 3 and 4, the people that I talked to were very concerned about the possibility of going on strike from Divisions 3 and 4, and a lot of people within those divisions would not have seen much of a financial benefit from an increase in the minimum funding package. So, for example, in the life sciences, a large number of the departments already get paid far more than the guaranteed funding package. So, the rhetorical language, so in some aspects, the strength of the language has to get stronger in terms of saying, okay, this is the comparables that we want to use and yada, yada, yada. But it's true, I think, that a lot of people in Divisions 3 and 4 didn't want to go on strike. So I'm not exactly clear if we're talking about different things, and it's just getting confused.
I'm just going to end it there, but yes, thank you for that comment. The comment is very legitimate, and we'll move on to our final.
So, I mean, the last comment I had, just to follow up on that, I think you're absolutely right. Division 3 and 4, they hate to go on a strike. I think I attribute it to when you're so badly funded, you're on welfare basically, and you miss out your welfare check, then people don't want to go out on strike because you're so dependent on that. I know that. I know students saying that if I miss my 1 month of TA, I'm going to go hungry. So I don't buy that language that there's a rift. I think it's just that it's very badly funded. And to answer, I just had a question for, I forgot your name. I mean, I'm from EC, and to say that people in EC do not have a problem with the funding package, I think is extremely, you got to be careful there. Because there's so many people there that they're just working their butt off, and their only hope is just get me out of here, right? So I think, at least I just wanted to make a comment to be careful about that. Nobody I think in the department is happy with their, it's adequate, but they're not happy with it. They say, oh, I'm getting funded. So that's all I would say. That's just a comment. I think it related both to your comments.
Jason or Amit, would you like to respond to the comment?
I don't understand. Sorry, what was the comment?
So I agreed with you. I agreed with you that there's a difference between when you want to go on strike, the students work. I just said I agree with you.
Oh, yeah.
My question was basically for Amit.
So
I said I agree with you in terms of, you're right, absolutely right. The students didn't want to go on strike, not necessarily whether they were happy with their funding.
Yeah, and I actually would like to comment on that. I don't necessarily disagree. I don't necessarily disagree with the way that, I'm not disagreeing with how QP did things. I'm just saying, I think that in general, the way that we should be operating as the Graduate Students Union is that we should be using stronger language than what QP used in terms of saying, these are comparables and yada, yada, yada.
Okay, and Amit, 30 seconds to respond.
Sure. I mean, I agree. Like, I know what you're saying. I was at, the town halls and stuff like that, and that, there are many EC members who aren't satisfied with the amount of funding that they get. But I'm just, what I meant when I said that was that compared to other departments within Divisions 3 and 4, EC receives more funding than most, and also the job prospects of students with degrees in masters and PhDs in electrical and computer engineering is somewhat different than students in some of the other departments. And so I think that, not that I don't think that ECs like deserve greater funding, but if you have to rank things by priority, I'd rather focus on departments where students get significantly less. That's all. Not that I think that everyone at EC is floating their money or happy with it.
Just to follow up on that, and